Chapter 1. The Great Deception of the Conventional Path. There is a dream that beats in the chest of almost every young person, a vibrant, pulse-quickening vision of what life could be. It is a dream painted in the bright colors of total freedom. You see yourself waking up without the shrill scream of an alarm clock. You envision traveling to breathtaking destinations on a Tuesday simply because the weather is nice. You imagine providing an incredibly abundant life for your family, paying for the best education, and driving a car that turns heads at every intersection. You see yourself doing all of this while you are still young, energetic, and fully capable of soaking in every drop of joy the world has to offer. But as you transition from childhood into adulthood, society steps in and methodically suffocates that dream with a wet blanket of conventional wisdom. You are seated in classrooms and told to memorize the script of the sensible life. The script is remarkably uniform no matter where you go, and it is preached by well-meaning parents, school teachers, and financial advisors. It goes something like this: study relentlessly, score top marks, and secure a respectable degree. Use that degree to land a safe, steady corporate job. Once you have that job, the real sacrifice begins. You must wake up before the sun, battle through exhausting city traffic, and surrender the best hours of your day to a cubicle. You must live far below your means, pinch every penny, negotiate for every minor discount, and deny yourself the small joys of the present. Take whatever fraction of your salary you can spare and lock it away in fixed deposits, funnel it into your provident fund, and drip feed it into mutual funds. If you do this with unwavering discipline, if you avoid any economic disasters, and if you simply wait 40 or 50 years, you will finally be rich. Think deeply about what this script is actually asking of you. It is demanding that you barter your most precious, irreplaceable asset, your youth and your vibrant life force, for a theoretical payoff that arrives in your twilight years. This is the great deception. A lifelong gamble where your very existence is the wager. They are selling you a roadmap to wealth that terminates at the doors of a retirement home. What good are tens of crores in the bank when your eyesight is fading, your joints ache with every step, and the sheer stamina required to travel the world has long since vanished? This conventional path promises financial freedom only after it has extracted all the freedom from your life. It is the pursuit of wealth in a wheelchair, and it is a tragically raw deal. For a long time, I bought into this deception. I believed that because I possessed no extraordinary athletic talent to play professional cricket, and because I lacked the striking looks or connections to become a movie star, I was destined for the slow, grinding path of mediocrity. I assumed that young wealth was exclusively reserved for those who won the genetic lottery, inherited massive family empires, or possessed some otherworldly artistic genius. For the rest of us normal folks, the only option was to put our heads down, endure the daily grind, and hope that compound interest would eventually work its slow, agonizing magic over the next half-century. But then, a single, fleeting moment completely shattered my worldview. It was a sweltering, humid afternoon in the heart of a bustling metropolis. I was in my early 20s, feeling particularly defeated by the oppressive weight of my own unremarkable future. I was taking a short break from a soul-crushing, low-paying job, standing near a dusty roadside tea stall, sipping a glass of cutting chai and wondering if this was all life had to offer. The air was thick with exhaust fumes and the relentless noise of honking commuters. Suddenly, the chaotic noise of the street was pierced by a sound that felt entirely alien. It was a deep, guttural, mechanical roar that vibrated right through the pavement and into my chest. Traffic seemed to part instinctively as a breathtaking, custom-built hypercar rolled down the street. It was low, sleek, and painted a brilliant, mesmerizing shade of silver that caught the hazy afternoon sun perfectly. It looked less like a vehicle and more like a fighter jet that had mistakenly landed on a city street. The car glided to a halt just a few meters away from where I stood, parking silently outside a high-end luxury hotel. I stood completely frozen, staring at a machine that easily cost more crores than I could ever hope to earn in a lifetime of following the conventional script. My mind immediately went to the driver. I expected the door to open and reveal a wealthy, silver-haired industrialist in a tailored suit, someone who had spent 50 years climbing the corporate ladder to finally afford his dream toy. The driver's side door did not just open, it swung upward toward the sky in a smooth, dramatic motion, and the person who stepped out completely broke my reality. He was not an old man. He was young, perhaps no older than 25 or 26. He was wearing faded jeans, casual sneakers, and a simple, unbranded t-shirt. He did not look like a tycoon, he did not look like a celebrity, and he certainly did not look like someone who had spent 4 decades saving his pennies in a provident fund. A surge of pure, unfiltered adrenaline washed over me. I had to know. I had to understand how this was possible. My legs moved before my brain could talk me out of it. I walked up to him, my heart hammering against my ribs, and nervously asked him a single question. I asked him what he did for a living to afford such an incredible machine. He smiled, not with the arrogance of a spoiled heir, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had figured out a puzzle. He told me he was a creator, an inventor who had built a system that solved a problem for a lot of people. He was friendly, but he was also busy. Within moments he had handed his keys to the valet and disappeared into the cool, marble-floored lobby of the hotel. That encounter lasted less than a minute, but it completely rewrote the code of my life. As I walked back to my miserable job, my mind was racing with a profound new truth. The young man was not famous. He was not on television. He had simply stepped outside the conventional boundaries of how society tells us money is made. That hypercar was not just a piece of sculpted metal and carbon fiber. It was a physical manifestation of a different reality. It was undeniable proof that you could achieve massive, life-altering wealth while you still had the youth to enjoy it. This realization is the first and most critical hurdle you must clear if you ever want to experience true financial independence. You must fundamentally unlearn everything you have been taught about time and money. The conventional wisdom, the slow, methodical, save and wait approach, is a roadmap designed to keep you functioning as a compliant cog in a massive economic machine. It teaches you to shrink your dreams to fit your income, rather than expanding your income to fit your grandest dreams. It trains you to accept that a life of passion, luxury, and total freedom is something to be deferred until your body is too old to appreciate it. But deep down you know there has to be another way. You see the contradictions every day. You see people who work 60 hours a week, sacrificing their family time and their health, only to remain drowning in financial anxiety. You see people who have followed the rules perfectly, who have saved and invested just as the experts advised, yet who are wiped out by a single economic downturn or an unexpected medical emergency. The slow path is not just tragically long, it is incredibly fragile. It relies entirely on factors you cannot control: the stability of your employer, the perpetual growth of the stock market, and the generous assumption that you will live a long, healthy life. True wealth is not a matter of hoarding rupees for half a century. It is not about clipping coupons, downgrading your coffee, or denying yourself the experiences that make life worth living. True wealth is about freedom. It is the freedom to wake up and decide exactly how you will spend your day. It is the freedom to support the causes you care about, to be present for the people you love, and to pursue your passions without the looming anxiety of unpaid bills. To achieve this kind of wealth while you are young and vibrant, you cannot rely on the slow, linear progression of a monthly salary. You must completely divorce yourself from the idea that your time is the only thing you have to trade for money. The young man in the silver hypercar did not trade 1,000,000 hours of his life to buy that car. He engaged in a completely different set of mathematics. He operated on a different roadmap, one that accelerated his wealth exponentially rather than linearly. You have the exact same potential. Regardless of your current age, your past failures, or your lack of special talents, you have the ability to step off the slow, agonizing treadmill of conventional wisdom. You can choose to stop trading your precious life force for a paycheck that barely keeps you afloat. But to do this, you must first recognize the deception for what it is. You must be willing to look at the script society has handed you and boldly tear it to pieces. You must be ready to embark on a completely different kind of journey. Chapter 2: The Illusion of Wealth and the Sidewalk Trap. Whenever we scroll through our social media feeds or flip through glossy magazines, we are constantly bombarded by the glamorous finish lines of success. We see the 20-something tech founder selling his startup for hundreds of crores. We see the extravagant destination weddings, the sprawling beachfront villas, and the private jets soaring above the clouds. We are mesmerized by these spectacular events of wealth. But this obsession with the final event is exactly what blinds us to the reality of how wealth is actually created. Wealth is never an event. It is a process. It is a carefully orchestrated formula, much like a long, demanding road trip. Imagine for a moment that you and your closest friends decide to take a road trip to a breathtaking hill station up north. For weeks, you obsess over the destination. You look at photos of the snow-capped peaks, you imagine the crisp mountain air, and you plan the lavish dinners you will have by the fireplace. But in your overwhelming excitement for the destination, you completely ignore the vehicle. You do not check the engine oil, you ignore the balding tires, and you forget to pack a road map. You just jump in the car, blast the music, and hit the highway. It is only a matter of time before the engine overheats, the radiator smokes, and you find yourself stranded on a deserted, sweltering stretch of tarmac miles from anywhere, watching your dream vacation evaporate into the hot, dusty air. This is exactly how most people approach their financial lives. They desperately want the destination of financial freedom, but they completely neglect the process and the vehicle required to get there. They cobble together random bits of financial advice, buying a trending stock they heard about at a dinner party, investing in a random piece of real estate, or trying out a side hustle for 2 weeks, and wonder why they are still financially stranded. You cannot bake a cake by just throwing sugar and flour into an oven and hoping for the best. You need the entire recipe, the precise measurements, and the correct sequence of steps. Wealth is the exact same way. It requires a complete formula consisting of your beliefs, your vehicle, the roads you choose to travel, and the speed at which you execute. And the very first element of that formula is your roadmap, your core belief system about money. The most crowded and dangerous roadmap in the world is what we can call the sidewalk. The sidewalk is not so much a path as it is a financial treadmill, driven entirely by the intoxicating drug of instant gratification. For the sidewalker, there is no future. There is only the immediate, burning desire of the present moment. Money is treated like a hot potato. The moment it lands in their bank account, it must be exchanged for the latest smartphone, a trendy designer outfit, or an overpriced night out at the city's most exclusive club. Think of someone you might know, perhaps a colleague or a friend, who lives their life perpetually one minor disaster away from total ruin. They might be one missed paycheck, one medical emergency, or one sudden layoff away from bankruptcy. Yet, if you look at their lifestyle, you would never guess they were teetering on the edge of a cliff. They justify their reckless spending with the same tired rationalizations. Life is short, you cannot take the money with you when you die, and you only live once. They mortgage their entire future just to experience a fleeting, temporary high today. The most dangerous deception of the sidewalk is that it is completely blind to how much money you actually make. We often assume that poor financial habits belong only to those with low incomes. This is a fatal misconception. There are countless people earning massive executive-level salaries who are riding the exact same sidewalk. They are what we call income rich but wealth poor. Picture a newly promoted corporate director. He lands a massive salary that places him in the top tier of earners. Immediately, the psychological trap snaps shut. Because he makes a king's ransom, he feels he must live like a king. He moves out of his comfortable apartment and signs the lease on a sprawling, premium high-rise penthouse that consumes a massive portion of his income. He trades in his reliable sedan for a luxury, imported SUV financed heavily through equated monthly installments. He begins wearing bespoke suits and dining exclusively at five-star restaurants. On the outside, he projects the ultimate image of success. He looks like a millionaire. But behind the tinted windows of that luxury SUV, he is suffocating. Every single rupee of his massive salary is already spoken for before the month even begins. The heavy EMIs, the exorbitant rent, and the premium credit card bills drain his accounts instantly. He goes to sleep sweating over his financial obligations and wakes up dreading the very job that pays him so well. He is trapped. He cannot quit, he cannot take a break, and he certainly cannot pursue his true passions. His high income did not buy him freedom, it simply bought him a much more expensive, heavily gilded cage. He has fallen victim to lifestyle servitude, where his possessions now own him. This happens because society has fed us a toxic, completely corrupted definition of what wealth actually is. We have been brainwashed to believe that wealth is defined by the superficial icons of luxury. The diamond watches, the oversized mansions, and the European sports cars. We buy these things because we crave the respect, the admiration, and the feelings of joy we believe they will deliver. But when these purchases are made on credit, or when they chain us to a job we despise, they destroy the very essence of what it means to be wealthy. True wealth is not authored by material possessions. True wealth is an intricate balance of three fundamental pillars: deep relationships, vibrant health, and absolute freedom. Wealth is the feeling of sitting around a dinner table with family and friends, knowing you are deeply connected and loved. It is the boundless energy you feel when your body is healthy and capable, free from the crushing, chronic stress of unpaid bills. Most importantly, wealth is freedom. It is the liberty to live your life entirely on your own terms. It is the freedom to watch your children grow up rather than missing their milestones because you are stuck in a boardroom. It is the freedom to say no to a toxic boss, to travel when the urge strikes, and to pursue your wildest dreams without asking for permission. When you finance the illusion of wealth to impress strangers, you actively destroy your true wealth. You trade your freedom for a car payment. You sacrifice your health to the anxiety of debt. You neglect your relationships because you are forced to work endless overtime just to keep the lights on in a house you can barely afford. Faux wealth is the enemy of real wealth. To break free from this trap, you must completely sever the link between your income and your ego. You must recognize that the siren song of the sidewalk, the desperate need to look rich, will forever prevent you from actually being rich. You must learn to delay gratification, not forever, but long enough to build a foundation that is unshakable. Once you realize that throwing more money at poor financial habits is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline, you naturally start searching for a better way. You realize that you need a plan, a structure, and a roadmap that looks beyond the coming weekend. This realization often pushes people to abandon the chaotic sidewalk and merge onto what society promises is the responsible, mature path. But as you are about to discover, this seemingly safe route is built on an entirely different set of devastating lies. Chapter 3: Escaping the Victim Mindset and the Mediocrity Lie. As the chaos of living paycheck to paycheck becomes too exhausting to bear, many people desperately search for a way out. They realize that living on the very edge of financial ruin, constantly chasing the next fleeting high, is a terrible strategy for a fulfilling life. But instead of finding true liberation, they often stumble into two deeply deceptive psychological traps that keep them firmly anchored to a life of quiet mediocrity. The first trap is the paralyzing belief that massive wealth is simply a matter of pure, unadulterated luck. The second is the voluntary surrender of control to the slow, soul-crushing grind of the conventional workday. Society absolutely loves a good overnight success story. We are culturally addicted to the idea of the sudden, miraculous big hit. We watch reality television shows where an ordinary, undiscovered singer belts out a tune and is suddenly catapulted into global stardom. Or we read viral articles about a young entrepreneur whose simple mobile application was bought for hundreds of crores. We look at these spectacular, isolated events and sigh with resignation, sincerely believing that these individuals simply got lucky. We tell ourselves that because we were not born under a lucky star, because we do not have wealthy parents or a stroke of divine intervention, we are destined to struggle. This is a massive delusion that systematically strips you of your free will. Luck is not a magical fairy that mysteriously taps you on the shoulder. Luck is the natural residue of process. It is the inevitable aftermath of relentless, unseen, and often unglamorous action. Imagine two young men, Rohan and Vikram, who both work grueling, exhausting shifts at a local logistics warehouse. Rohan spends his evenings bitterly complaining about his meager wages, playing immersive video games to escape his reality, and scrolling through endless social media feeds of celebrity gossip. He is waiting for his lucky break. He buys lottery tickets every single week, desperately hoping for a sudden miracle that will instantly rescue him from his circumstances. Vikram, on the other hand, refuses to wait for a miracle. He spends his exhausted evenings learning how to code from free online tutorials. He builds clumsy, broken software programs, fails repeatedly, and slowly learns how to create simple inventory management tools. He sacrifices his weekends to attend local tech meetups, nervously introduces himself to strangers, and shares his imperfect creations with anyone who will listen. Years later, a prominent local business owner notices Vikram's unique tool and offers him a massive, life-changing contract to completely overhaul their entire supply chain system. Rohan looks at Vikram's sudden wealth and bitterly complains to his friends that Vikram just got lucky. But was it luck? Or was it the inevitable collision of intense preparation, dedicated process, and carefully engineered probability? You simply cannot win the game if you stubbornly refuse to step onto the playing field. This heavy reliance on luck almost always breeds a highly toxic victim mindset. When you deeply believe that external uncontrollable forces dictate your financial success, you naturally start blaming those exact same forces for your profound failures. You become a financial hitchhiker. Think about the sheer, terrifying danger of hitchhiking on a dark, desolate highway in the middle of the night. You are willingly stepping into a total stranger's vehicle, handing over complete, unquestioned control of your final destination, your personal safety, and your very life. Yet millions of intelligent people do exactly this with their financial futures. They hand the keys of their lives over to their corporate employers, to the government, and to the wild, unpredictable whims of the global economy. When the economy inevitably dips and the company decides to downsize to protect its profit margins, the hitchhiker cries out in righteous anger. They shout that the company laid them off, that the system is rigged, and that their life has been unfairly ruined. But the harsh, stinging truth of personal accountability asks a very different set of questions. Who willingly chose to work for a company that could so easily dispose of them? Who chose to rely entirely on a single, fragile stream of income? Who chose to ignore the glaring warning signs of a shifting, modernizing industry? There is a profound, life-altering difference between responsibility and accountability. Responsibility is simply admitting that you made a specific choice. Accountability is actively altering your future behavior so that you are never victimized by the consequences of that choice ever again. If you refuse to take the heavy steering wheel of your own life, you will always be at the terrifying mercy of whoever happens to be driving. Realizing the profound danger of this chaotic vulnerability, a person might finally decide to get serious about their future. They abandon the reckless, instant gratification of their youth and proudly merge onto what society universally praises as the responsible path. They decide to trade the unpredictability of their earlier years for the perceived safety and security of the slow lane. They commit themselves to the ultimate grueling marathon of the middle class, working 40 to 50 hours a week in a sterile office, saving a meager percentage of their monthly salary, and blindly trusting that decades of compound interest will eventually lead to a comfortable, secure retirement. But you must look very closely at the horrific mathematics of this socially accepted trade. In a standard salaried job, you are essentially making a terrifying transaction with your own mortality. You are giving away 5 days of your vibrant, youthful life, Monday through Friday, in exchange for a mere 2 days of freedom on Saturday and Sunday. If an investment banker offered you a financial deal where you gave them 5 rupees today and they promised to give you back only 2 rupees tomorrow, you would laugh in their face and walk away. It is a staggering negative 60% return on your investment. Yet millions of rational people accept this exact same negative return when they trade the irreplaceable hours of their lives. We celebrate Friday evenings with such intense, desperate passion simply because it marks a temporary, fleeting release from this indentured servitude. We are paid our freedom in the brief currency of the weekend, only to surrender it all over again when the alarm clock screams on Monday morning. This is precisely why a traditional job, no matter how prestigious the corporate title or how comfortable the air-conditioned office might be, is a fundamentally flawed vehicle for creating massive, life-changing wealth. When you work for a fixed salary, your income is inextricably tethered to your time. You are literally selling your life hour by hour for small pieces of paper. Furthermore, a job completely strips you of any real leverage and meaningful control. You cannot walk into your manager's office tomorrow morning and confidently demand a 1000% raise because your value is dictated by a rigid corporate structure. You are constantly subjected to the petty grievances of office politics, the arbitrary decisions of upper management, and the looming, ever-present threat of obsolescence. By accepting this trade, you are domesticating yourself into normalcy, accepting a life of quiet desperation and guaranteed mediocrity. This path asks you to settle for far less than you deserve, to drastically shrink your grandest dreams, and to cross your fingers in the hope that you survive long enough to see your retirement savings mature. But blind hope is not a valid financial strategy, and a roadmap built entirely on sacrificing the absolute best years of your life is a massive gamble you simply cannot afford to take. To truly understand why this conventional, widely praised path is mathematically doomed to fail you, we must tear apart the very equations that govern it, exposing the fatal, structural flaws that keep the masses forever running in place. Chapter 4. The Fatal Mathematics of Get Rich Slow. Imagine walking into a massive, echoing university lecture hall and watching a student desperately trying to solve a complex physics equation on the chalkboard. For hours, the student furiously scribbles numbers, erases them, and tries again, their face flushed with frustration. The effort is undeniable, the determination is commendable, but the answer is consistently, stubbornly wrong. Why? Because the student is using a fundamentally flawed formula. No matter how much willpower they apply, no matter how many hours they spend sweating in front of that chalkboard, the math simply will not allow them to reach the correct answer. This is the exact tragedy playing out in the lives of millions of hardworking people who are desperately trying to achieve financial freedom. They are pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into a wealth equation that is mathematically doomed from the very start. If you are following the conventional path, your financial strategy can be boiled down to a very simple equation. Your wealth equals your job income plus your market investments. On the surface, this sounds entirely reasonable. But when you dismantle this equation and look closely at the gears turning inside, you uncover a toxic structural flaw known as uncontrollable limited leverage. To accumulate massive wealth, you need the ability to control your income and leverage it infinitely. The conventional path offers neither. Let us examine the first half of this equation, your job. In a standard career, your income is dictated by your intrinsic value, which the marketplace measures purely in units of time. You are paid either by the hour or by an annual salary. But time is the most rigid, unforgiving limit in the universe. You cannot walk into your manager's office and magically demand to work 400 hours in a single day. You cannot decide to stretch your career over 10,000 years, because your primary tool for creating wealth is permanently tethered to a finite, unchangeable number. Your wealth itself is strictly limited. Small numbers, no matter how hard you work, simply do not add up to extraordinary fortunes. When people slowly begin to realize that their job will never make them rich, they instinctively try to manipulate this flawed equation in the only way they know how, by going back to school. Consider the story of a dedicated middle manager who realizes she is falling behind financially. Desperate to increase her intrinsic value, she takes on massive educational loans to enroll in a prestigious 2-year executive management program. She sacrifices her evenings, her weekends, and her sanity, believing this degree is her golden ticket. When she finally graduates, she secures a promotion and a modest bump in her salary. She feels a fleeting sense of victory, completely unaware that she has just traded one trap for a much heavier one. Her new, slightly higher income is immediately devoured by the crushing monthly repayments on her student loans. She has fallen victim to education servitude. This parasitic debt forces her to remain chained to a high-stress corporate job she has come to despise, simply to keep her head above water. Her expensive education did not buy her freedom. It bought her a shiny new pair of golden handcuffs, ensuring she remains trapped in the slow lane for decades to come. The second half of the conventional wealth equation relies heavily on the supposed magic of compound interest and market investments. Financial planners love to sit you down, slide a colorful chart across the desk, and enthusiastically explain that if you just save a few thousand rupees every month and invest it at a steady 8% return, you will be a multi-millionaire by the time you retire. What they conveniently fail to highlight is the brutal, unforgiving reality of time and inflation. 40 years from now, that distant fortune will possess only a fraction of its current purchasing power. They also ask you to blindly trust that the stock market will provide a smooth, predictable ride, completely ignoring the devastating economic recessions that can instantly wipe out a decade of disciplined savings. You are basing your entire financial future on variables you have absolutely zero control over: the global economy, corporate performance, and interest rates. Why then do so many intelligent people blindly follow this path? Because it is aggressively packaged and sold to them by charismatic, wealthy experts. But there is a glaring, unspoken hypocrisy at play here, a profound paradox of practice. Imagine walking into a high-end gymnasium to hire a premium personal trainer who promises to help you build a lean, athletic physique. But when the trainer finally walks out of the office to greet you, he is dangerously overweight, struggling to catch his breath after a few steps, and holding a greasy box of fast food. You would immediately turn around and demand a refund, utterly refusing to take health advice from someone who clearly does not practice what they preach. Yet society does this constantly with financial advice. We listen to television pundits and best-selling authors who passionately tell us to cut up our credit cards, stop buying overpriced coffee, and diligently invest in mutual funds. But if you look behind the curtain at how these experts actually amassed their own massive fortunes, it was not through aggressive frugality or clipping coupons. They became incredibly wealthy by building massive media brands, selling millions of books worldwide, and leveraging global distribution networks. They are using a completely different, high-speed mathematical equation to generate explosive wealth, all while selling you the painfully slow, miserable path of extreme sacrifice. The truth is that the conventional path is not safe. It is an agonizing, lifelong gamble based entirely on blind hope. You are asked to hope that your company does not lay you off during the next corporate restructuring. You hope that your physical health miraculously holds up long enough for you to reach retirement age without being buried under debilitating medical bills. You hope that the real estate market continues to rise in a straight line forever, treating your primary residence as a flawless investment, while completely ignoring the painful reality of housing market crashes. You hope the stock market gives you a steady, predictable return year after year, shielding your nest egg from global catastrophes. Hope is a beautiful, deeply necessary human emotion, but it is a catastrophic financial plan. When you build your entire existence around variables you cannot control, you are constantly anxious, constantly vulnerable, and constantly forced to settle for a diluted version of your life. You give up on the dream of the luxury home overlooking the ocean. You abandon the desire for spontaneous, exotic travel, and you surrender your total freedom. You resign yourself to a life of quiet, suffocating mediocrity simply because the underlying mathematics of your chosen path do not allow for anything greater. It is time to stop trying to press the accelerator to the floor of a vehicle that is structurally designed to go 20 kilometers an hour. It is time to step out of the slow lane, reject the uncontrollable variables, and learn the true mathematical formula that actually creates explosive wealth. Chapter 5. Switching Teams. The Wealth Shortcut. Imagine standing at a bustling, chaotic city intersection during the evening rush hour. The air is thick with the sounds of blaring horns, the chatter of pedestrians, and the hum of countless engines. Neon signs flash above, advertising everything from premium smartphones to exotic holiday packages. Look closely at the sea of humanity flowing around you. Almost every single person in your line of sight is actively participating in a massive, relentless global game. But here is the heartbreaking truth. 99% of them are playing for the losing team. From the very moment we are born, we are rigorously trained, conditioned, and programmed to be the ultimate consumers. We are taught to desire the newest imported gadgets, to crave the trendy designer clothes, and to eagerly hand over our hard-earned rupees for a fleeting moment of satisfaction. We are the fuel that keeps the grand economic engine running, but we are rarely the ones who actually own the engine. If you are finally exhausted from playing a game you were never designed to win, the solution is remarkably simple in concept, though deeply challenging in execution. You must switch teams. You must officially resign from the team of the consumer and boldly join the minority team of the producer. This is the great pivot. It is the defining shift in mindset that separates those who remain trapped in financial anxiety from those who experience explosive, life-altering wealth. Instead of desperately digging for gold in a crowded valley, you must become the person selling the shovels. Instead of taking a class to learn a new skill, you must become the visionary who creates the curriculum. Instead of borrowing money to finance a lifestyle you cannot afford, you must become the entity that lends the capital. You must reorient your entire perspective so that you no longer look at the world through the hungry eyes of a consumer, but through the analytical, calculating lens of a producer. Think about what happens when you walk into a massive multi-story shopping mall. The consumer walks in and immediately feels the emotional pull of the merchandise. They see a pair of premium shoes and think about how good those shoes will look on their feet and how envious their friends will be. But when a producer walks into that exact same mall, their mind operates on a completely different frequency. The producer does not look at the shoes, they look at the system. They ask themselves how the store is managing its inventory. They calculate the foot traffic passing by the storefront. They wonder where the raw materials are sourced, what the profit margins might be, and what psychological triggers the marketing team is using to convince the consumer to part with their money. When you begin to dissect the world around you with this level of analytical curiosity, the invisible architecture of wealth suddenly becomes visible. You begin to see opportunities and inefficiencies everywhere. This profound shift from consumer to producer is the gateway to the ultimate financial shortcut. Now, society has completely vilified the concept of a shortcut. We have been told that getting rich quickly is a myth, a scam, or a delusion sold by late-night infomercial charlatans. But you must separate the toxic fantasy of getting rich easy from the very real mathematical possibility of getting rich fast. It is absolutely impossible to get rich easily. There is no magical software, no hidden stock tip, and no secret meditation that will drop a fortune into your lap without intense, sustained effort. However, getting rich fast is not only possible, it is happening all around you every single day. The young entrepreneur who builds a software platform and sells it for 100 crores in 4 years has just experienced a shortcut. 4 years of brutal, exhausting, relentless work is undeniably difficult. It is not easy. But compared to sitting in a cubicle for 50 years, slowly saving pennies until you are too old to enjoy them, those 4 years are the ultimate shortcut. To access this shortcut, you must discard the slow, fragile mathematics of the conventional path and adopt the true wealth equation. In this new paradigm, your wealth is no longer determined by your hourly wage or your annual salary. Instead, your wealth is defined by two powerful, interconnected components: your net profit and your asset value. This is the holy grail of financial independence. It is an environment characterized by controllable, unlimited leverage. In this environment, you are no longer fighting against the rigid, unyielding boundaries of time. You have your hands firmly on the steering wheel, and you have the ability to press the accelerator as hard as your ambition allows. Let us explore exactly how this equation changes lives by looking at a deeply relatable scenario. Consider a passionate, hard-working man who loves baking. He decides to follow the popular advice to turn his passion into a profession, so he takes his entire life savings and opens a small, charming neighborhood bakery. He wakes up at 3 in the morning every single day, his hands covered in flour, sweating near the hot ovens to bake fresh bread and pastries. His customers love his work, and there is a line out the door every morning. By all conventional measures, he is a success. But beneath the surface, he is trapped. He has simply created a grueling, high-stress job for himself disguised as a business. His wealth equation is still fundamentally broken because his income is entirely dependent on his own physical labor. He can only bake so many loaves of bread in a 24-hour period. If he gets sick, the bakery closes and his income drops to zero. He has no leverage. He is entirely limited by his own physical endurance and the ticking clock. He is on a treadmill, running at maximum speed just to stay in the exact same place. Now, imagine this same baker undergoes a profound shift in mindset. He realizes that to achieve true freedom, he must stop being the primary laborer in his business and start becoming the architect of a business system. He steps away from the ovens. He documents his exact recipes, his baking times, and his quality control measures. He hires and trains a team of dedicated bakers to replicate his process perfectly. He then shifts his focus from baking bread to securing massive distribution. He approaches major local grocery chains, upscale cafes, and corporate cafeterias, securing lucrative contracts to supply them with his baked goods every morning. He eventually transitions his operations into a massive, centralized commercial kitchen. Notice how the mathematics of his life have completely transformed. He is no longer selling 50 loaves of bread a day to the people who happen to walk past his shop. He is now moving 5,000 loaves a day across the entire city. His net profit is determined by the number of units he sells multiplied by the profit he makes on each unit. Because he has established a vast distribution network, his units sold can scale infinitely. Because he is buying raw materials like flour and sugar in massive wholesale quantities, his cost per unit drops, increasing his unit profit. He has achieved controllable, unlimited leverage. If he wants to increase his income, he does not have to beg a manager for a minor raise, and he does not have to physically work more hours. He simply secures 3 more corporate contracts or tweaks his production process to improve his profit margin. He controls the variables. But the monthly profit from selling all that bread is only the first half of the true wealth equation. The second and far more explosive component is asset value. By stepping away from the daily grind and building a self-sustaining system, the baker has created an entity that possesses massive intrinsic value. He has built a recognized brand, a flawless operational structure, and a reliable cash-flowing machine. In the business world, companies are routinely bought and sold based on a multiple of their net profit. If his commercial bakery is generating a net profit of 2 crores a year and the industry standard valuation is a multiple of 5, he has essentially created an asset worth 10 crores. This is how the rich truly get rich. They do not slowly accumulate wealth by hoarding a fraction of a monthly paycheck. They experience explosive leaps in wealth through liquidation events. Years after stepping away from the ovens, our baker is approached by a massive national food conglomerate. They want his brand, his recipes, and his local market dominance. They offer him a massive lump sum to acquire his company. In a single stroke of a pen, he transforms the paper value of his asset into immense, liquid reality. He did not have to wait until he was 70 years old to experience financial freedom. He built a system, he scaled it using unlimited leverage, and he liquidated it. This is the incredible power of the wealth shortcut. It is the deliberate, strategic transition from trading your finite time for money to building a robust system that generates money independently of your time. It requires a complete departure from the comforting yet suffocating norms of conventional wisdom. It requires you to look at the massive, overwhelming machinery of the world not as a consumer waiting to be fed, but as a visionary producer ready to build. The moment you grasp this concept and apply it to your life, you are no longer a passenger hoping the road leads somewhere pleasant. You are the driver, the map maker, and the owner of the vehicle. But to truly master this expressway, to ensure that your system thrives and your wealth becomes permanently self-sustaining, you must learn exactly how to build mechanisms that separate your income from the ticking clock. Chapter 6. Divorcing Wealth from Time. There is a profound, almost terrifying realization that strikes you when you finally step back and examine the mechanics of a traditional livelihood. You realize that your time is the absolute most precious coin of your life. It is the only currency you possess that, once spent, can never be earned back. Yet, the conventional script demands that you take this finite, irreplaceable treasure and casually hand it over to an employer in exchange for printed paper. If you stop working, the paper stops flowing. If you take a month off to care for an ailing parent or to simply breathe and rediscover yourself, your income halts entirely. You are locked into a desperate transaction where you must constantly sell your freedom to buy your freedom. To truly escape this trap, you must engineer a deliberate, permanent divorce between your wealth and your time. You must transition from performing manual labor to engaging in the industrialized production of wealth. The ultimate holy grail of this financial independence is passive income, which simply means earning money while you are not actively working. Imagine waking up on a Tuesday morning, enjoying a slow, unhurried cup of tea on your balcony, and knowing that while you slept, your bank account grew. It does not matter if you spend the afternoon reading a novel, playing with your children, or traveling across the globe, your income continues to flow unabated. This is not a fantasy reserved for a chosen few. It is a structural reality for those who know how to plant and nurture what we can call a money tree. A money tree is a business system that survives on its own, requiring only periodic pruning and maintenance, while consistently bearing the fruit of passive income. It acts as a tireless surrogate, trading its time so that you do not have to trade yours. However, Not all businesses are capable of becoming money trees. Many well-intentioned entrepreneurs abandon the corporate grind only to buy themselves a much more stressful, demanding job. If you open a small retail shop and must physically be present behind the counter for 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, you have not planted a money tree. You have planted a demanding shrub that will consume your life. To achieve true passivity, you must cultivate specific types of business seedlings. There are 5 distinct categories of these seedlings, each possessing a different potential for separating your income from your daily labor. The first and most traditional seedling is the rental system. Real estate is the classic example. When you own a commercial property and lease it to a stable tenant, you receive a check every single month simply because the passage of time allows them to use your asset. It is highly passive. But rental systems are not limited to physical bricks and mortar. If you invent a unique manufacturing process, secure a patent, and license that technology to a massive factory, they pay you a royalty for every unit they produce. A talented photographer who licenses her images to global media agencies is utilizing a rental system. The asset is created once, but it is rented out perpetually, generating income that is completely divorced from the creator's current time. The second seedling, and perhaps the most explosive in the modern era, is the computer and software system. Consider the story of a young woman named Ananya who noticed that the bustling, multi-generational textile merchants in her city were still tracking their massive, complex inventories using dog-eared notebooks and chaotic spreadsheets. Instead of offering to manually organize their books for an hourly fee, Ananya spent 6 grueling months coding a beautifully simple, cloud-based inventory management application specifically tailored to their unique workflow. Computers are miraculous workers. They operate 24 hours a day, they never demand a raise, and they never complain about office politics. Once Ananya's software was built, it cost her nearly nothing to duplicate. She began selling monthly subscriptions to merchants across the entire country. Whether she was asleep, sick, or on a month-long vacation, her software was flawlessly managing millions of rupees in inventory for her clients, and her bank account was automatically receiving subscription fees. She had built a pristine money tree. The third seedling is the content system. This involves creating information or media that can be infinitely distributed. When an author pours their soul into writing a breathtaking novel, the labor is intensely concentrated over a period of months or years, but once that manuscript is published, it becomes a scalable asset. That book can be translated into 20 languages and sold in millions of copies around the world. Years after the author has typed the final sentence, someone in a completely different time zone will purchase the book, and a royalty will flow back to the creator. Blogs, digital courses, and online media platforms all function as content systems, allowing you to create value once and monetize it repeatedly. The fourth seedling is the distribution system, which is any structure designed to move products or services to the masses. You could formulate the most incredible, health-restoring organic tea in the world, but if you only sell it from a tiny stall outside your house, your leverage is tragically limited. However, if you negotiate a deal to place your tea on the shelves of 1,000 national supermarkets, you have plugged your product into a massive distribution system. Franchising operates on the exact same principle. A successful local restaurant concept can be packaged, branded, and sold to independent operators, instantly scaling a single, localized success into a nationwide empire. Distribution systems are the amplifiers that take a great product and push it into the hands of millions. The fifth and final seedling is the human resource system. This is the process of building an organization of people to manage and scale your operations. It is inherently the most unpredictable and challenging system to manage because human beings are wonderfully complex and require constant leadership, motivation, and oversight. Adding employees can sometimes erode your personal passivity if not managed correctly, but it is absolutely necessary if you wish to scale your enterprise to a massive valuation. You cannot run a billion-rupee global empire entirely by yourself. You must build teams, and those teams become the machinery that sustains your wealth. While these 5 business systems are incredibly powerful, there is an ultimate, supreme money tree that you already hold in your hands, even if you are currently broke. The most powerful passive income generator in existence is money itself. This is the glorious pivot where you transition from being a consumer who pays interest to a producer and an owner who collects it. Every single rupee you save is a tiny freedom fighter. When you amass a massive army of these freedom fighters, they go to work for you, 24 hours a day, generating more money without requiring a single drop of your sweat. The conventional advice tells you to diligently save a tiny fraction of your monthly salary and rely on the magic of compound interest over 40 years to eventually make you rich. But the wealthy do not use compound interest to build their wealth. They use their business systems to generate massive, explosive wealth, and then they use compound interest to protect that wealth and generate limitless passive income. Trying to get rich by saving 5,000 rupees a month in a fixed deposit is like trying to ride a tidal wave when it is still a tiny ripple a million miles out at sea. It will barely move you. But when a tidal wave reaches the shoreline, its force is unstoppable. If you use a high-leverage business system to generate 10 crores in a few short years, and you invest that massive lump sum into safe, yield-bearing instruments returning just 6%, you have instantly created an effortless passive income of 60 lakhs a year. You ride the tidal wave of compound interest at its absolute crest. Underpinning all of this, every business system, every distribution network, and every massive financial liquidation is the single, irrefutable law of wealth. It is not a mystical theory built on wishing, hoping, or merely thinking positive thoughts. You can stare at a blank piece of paper and visualize a best-selling novel until your eyes ache, but the universe will never hand you a finished manuscript until you sit down and aggressively type the words. The true, mathematical law of the universe is the law of affection. This law dictates that the more lives you affect in an entity you control, the richer you will become. It is brutally simple. To make millions, you must impact millions. This impact is achieved through either scale or magnitude. Scale is reaching a massive number of people. If you write a compelling piece of software that solves a minor annoyance and you sell it for just 50 rupees to 2 million people, you have leveraged massive scale to create enormous wealth. Magnitude, on the other hand, is reaching fewer people but providing an incredibly high, deeply impactful value. Imagine a developer who purchases an abandoned, derelict plot of land in a struggling neighborhood and transforms it into a beautiful, secure, and affordable housing complex for 400 families. By providing high-quality shelter, this developer is impacting those families with immense magnitude. The profit per unit is substantial because the value provided is life-changing. If you combine scale and magnitude, creating something of immense value that reaches millions of people, you step into the realm of the ultra-wealthy. Look closely at any individual who possesses spectacular, self-made wealth, and you will always find the fingerprints of this law. Professional athletes earn staggering fortunes because they provide entertainment that is consumed by millions of viewers, leveraging massive scale. A surgeon who pioneers a revolutionary new life-saving procedure commands exceptional fees because their service possesses unparalleled magnitude. Wealth is not an accident. It is a direct mathematical reflection of the value you provide to society. To fully harness this incredible power, to plant these money trees and impact the world, you must ensure that the vehicle carrying you on this journey is functioning flawlessly. You cannot build a bulletproof business system if your own personal operating system is corrupted. You must take absolute ownership of your life, clear the psychological debris from your windshield, and prepare yourself to navigate the resistance that will inevitably come. Chapter 7. Upgrading your vehicle. Ownership and choice. You can have the most meticulously detailed roadmap in the world, and you can be staring down a vast, wide-open expressway built for absolute speed. But if the vehicle you are driving is fundamentally broken, you are not going anywhere. In the journey of wealth creation, the vehicle is you. You are the engine, the chassis, and the driver of your financial destiny. Before you can accelerate toward true freedom, you must deeply examine the condition of this vehicle, take absolute ownership of it, and ensure that every single component is functioning with pristine clarity. Taking ownership of your vehicle begins with a structural, legal transformation. There is a widely celebrated piece of conventional financial advice that tells you to always pay yourself first. The idea is that before you pay your rent, your utility bills, or your grocery tabs, you should immediately funnel a portion of your income into your savings. It sounds incredibly wise, but for anyone trapped in a traditional salaried job, it is a mathematical impossibility. If you are an employee, you are never paid first. The government takes its share directly from your paycheck through taxes deducted at the source before the money even touches your bank account. You are effectively paid last, left to build your life and your savings on whatever remnants the government decides to leave behind. To truly pay yourself first, you must legally own yourself, and you do this by establishing a corporate entity. When you operate as a private limited company or a limited liability partnership, you fundamentally alter the mathematics of taxation and liability. A corporate entity acts as a protective, surrogate shield around your business system. It exists as a separate legal person. Because of this structure, a business earns income, deducts all of its operational expenses, and only pays taxes on the remaining profit. The business pays itself first, funds its growth, and deals with the government last. Furthermore, attempting to build massive wealth as a sole proprietor is a terrifying, reckless gamble. If a customer decides to sue your business for an unforeseen accident and you are operating without a corporate shield, your personal assets, your home, your personal savings, your car, are all entirely exposed. Upgrading your vehicle means building this impenetrable armor around your life, separating your personal existence from the risks and mechanics of your wealth-generating systems. But the legal structure of your vehicle is only the outer shell. The true core of your journey is the steering wheel. And the steering wheel of your life is your choices. We often look at severe financial hardship and assume that a lack of money is the root cause of the problem. But a lack of money is merely a symptom. The underlying disease is almost always a long, uninterrupted sequence of poor choices. Your life today is the exact cumulative sum of every decision you have ever made, both conscious and unconscious. If you are deeply unhappy with your current circumstances, you must step up and take absolute, unflinching responsibility for the fact that you steered yourself there. Think about the sheer, terrifying horsepower of a single choice. Imagine you are driving a high-performance sports car down the highway at top speed. If you jerk the steering wheel just a fraction of an inch, the vehicle will veer violently off the road and crash into a barrier. Your life operates with that exact same level of sensitivity. We make what we call treasonous choices, decisions that inflict permanent, irreparable harm on our futures. A young man decides to have a few too many drinks at a party and convinces himself he is perfectly fine to drive home. That single momentary lapse in judgment results in a devastating accident. In the blink of an eye, he loses his freedom, his career prospects, and his future, all because of a 3-inch turn of the steering wheel. Treasonous choices do not care about your potential. They alter your trajectory forever. This horsepower is especially potent when you are young. When a golfer strikes a ball, a club face that is misaligned by just 1 millimeter at the point of impact will send the ball curving wildly off course, landing in the deep woods hundreds of meters away. This is the impact differential of your choices. The decisions you make in your 20s, who you choose to marry, the friends you decide to surround yourself with, the habits you cultivate, and the financial debts you take on radiate with immense strength, forming the thick, unbendable trunk of your life's tree. As you get older, the branches of your choices become thinner and weaker, making it much harder to change the fundamental direction of the tree. If you want to change your life, you must grab the steering wheel with absolute conviction today, knowing that the choices you make this afternoon will ripple across the decades. However, the choices of action you make in the physical world are always preceded by an even more powerful force: your choices of perception. Your windshield is your perception of reality, and if it is covered in the grime of self-doubt, negativity, and limiting beliefs, you will inevitably drive into a ditch. Imagine two people walking past a magnificent, sprawling luxury villa overlooking the ocean. The first person, clouded by a dirty windshield, sighs and mutters that they will never be able to afford something so grand, assuming the owner must be corrupt or born into immense privilege. The second person, looking through a crystal-clear windshield, stares at the villa and asks a completely different set of questions. They ask what incredible system the owner built to generate that kind of wealth and how they can replicate that exact same success. Your perception dictates your vocabulary, and your vocabulary dictates your reality. If your internal monologue is dominated by words like, "I can't," "I will never," and "if only," you are actively programming your vehicle for failure. You must consciously wipe your windshield clean. You must replace flimsy, defeated language with words of absolute conviction. Instead of saying you will try to build a business, you must declare that you will build a business. To help navigate the treacherous roads of life and ensure your windshield remains clear, you must adopt robust decision-making frameworks. The first is a rapid defensive mechanism used to avoid treasonous detours: worst-case consequence analysis. Whenever you face a decision that carries significant risk, you must pause for a fraction of a second and ask yourself 3 questions. What is the absolute worst-case outcome of this choice? What is the mathematical probability of that outcome actually happening? And finally, is that a risk you are willing to accept? If you are asked to partner with an investor who has a murky, unethical reputation, you run this analysis. The worst-case scenario is that they defraud your company, entangle you in a massive legal battle, and destroy your reputation. The probability might be high, making it an unacceptable risk. By running this simple mental check, you steer clear of catastrophic, life-altering mistakes. For the massive, complex forks in the road, like deciding whether to quit your secure corporate job to launch your startup, or choosing between moving to Bengaluru for a tech opportunity versus staying in Hyderabad to build your own agency, you need a more analytical tool. You use a weighted average decision matrix. You list all the factors that are important to your decision: the potential for infinite scale, the quality of life, the proximity to family, the initial capital required, and the stress levels. You assign a weight to each factor based on how deeply it matters to you, and then you grade each potential choice against those factors. By multiplying the weight by the grade, you remove the suffocating emotional anxiety from the decision. You let the mathematics provide pristine clarity, revealing exactly which path aligns with your ultimate goals. As you finally clean your windshield, grab the steering wheel, and begin to accelerate away from the crowded, slow-moving traffic of conventional society, you are going to encounter a powerful, invisible force trying to push you back. This is the natural headwind of societal conditioning. The moment you announce that you are skipping the safe, prestigious corporate promotion to build your own system, the pushback will be immediate and fierce. Your friends will call you crazy. Your parents will worry that you are throwing your life away. Your colleagues will secretly hope you fail, simply because your courage to attempt the extraordinary highlights their own quiet surrender to mediocrity. You must learn to completely deodorize this flatulent headwind. The ridicule of the masses is the ultimate tribute paid to the visionary. You cannot allow the fears, the limiting beliefs, and the dirty windshields of other people to dictate the direction of your vehicle. The universe has absolutely no memory of your past failures, your awkward mistakes, or the times you stumbled. The only person keeping a meticulous record of your past is you. You have the power to seal those records permanently, to classify your past failures not as treasonous defeats, but as highly accelerative lessons. With a legally armored vehicle, your hands firmly on the steering wheel of choice, and a brilliantly clear windshield, you are finally ready to ignite the engine and discover exactly what it takes to fuel a journey of this magnitude. Chapter 8. Fueling the Journey, Time and Mindset. Every magnificent vehicle, no matter how perfectly engineered or beautifully designed, is absolutely useless without the right fuel to propel it forward. You can possess a pristine corporate structure, a brilliantly clear windshield of perception, and a firm grip on the steering wheel of your choices, but if your fuel tank is empty, you will remain stranded on the side of the road. On this extraordinary journey toward financial freedom, your primordial, most precious fuel is not high-octane petrol, and it is certainly not money. Your ultimate fuel is time. It is the absolute equalizer of the human experience. Whether you are destitute or a billionaire, you are granted the exact same 24 hours in a day. The profound difference between those who remain trapped in financial anxiety and those who achieve explosive wealth lies entirely in how they value, protect, and burn this irreplaceable fuel. The conventional world trains us to operate with a completely backward understanding of value. We are taught to guard our money with ferocious intensity while casually throwing our time into the wind. Imagine a man who wakes up early on his only day off, gets into his car, and drives 45 minutes through dense, agonizing city traffic just to reach a specific wholesale market on the other side of town. He spends another hour hunting for parking and navigating crowded aisles, all to save 200 rupees on a bulk purchase of household supplies. He then spends 45 minutes driving back home in the sweltering heat. He feels a deep sense of victory because he protected his money. But look at what he actually traded. He sacrificed nearly 3 hours of his finite, unrecoverable life to save a microscopic sum. He valued his money far more than he valued his life force. When you shift your mindset from a consumer to a producer, your relationship with time completely reverses. You realize that money is infinitely abundant. It can be lost, earned back, multiplied, and generated out of thin air through systems. Time, however, is fiercely limited and constantly draining. The truly wealthy view time as their most sacred asset. They will gladly spend vast amounts of money to buy back an hour of their day. They hire assistants, pay for direct flights instead of long layovers, and outsource menial tasks, not because they are lazy, but because they understand that their time is better spent building systems that generate massive leverage. If you are constantly trading your free time to save a few pennies, you are treating your ultimate fuel like worthless dirt. To accelerate your wealth, you must fiercely guard your time, treating every hour as a deeply valuable seed that should be planted into your business systems rather than squandered on trivialities. But having a full tank of time is not enough if your engine is grinding itself to pieces from the inside out. Your vehicle requires constant, high-quality maintenance, and the oil that keeps your mental engine running smoothly is continuous education. Society pushes a very dangerous narrative that education is a finite chapter of your life. We are told that you go to school, endure the exams, earn your degree, and then your education is officially complete. You toss your graduation cap into the air and never pick up a textbook again. This mindset is the equivalent of buying a brand new performance vehicle and never, ever changing the engine oil. Over the years, the oil becomes thick, stale, and contaminated with debris. The engine struggles, loses its horsepower, and eventually seizes completely. When you stop learning, your mind becomes stale, your skills become obsolete, and your value to the marketplace plummets. The wealthy understand that graduation is not the end of education. It is simply the end of formal, mandated learning and the beginning of aggressive, self-directed learning. Consider a young woman working in a declining retail industry. She sees the writing on the wall as her company struggles to compete with massive online platforms. Instead of waiting around to be laid off and complaining about the unfairness of the economy, she decides to change her mental oil. She does not take out a massive, paralyzing loan to return to university for a generic master's degree. Instead, she utilizes the limitless, virtually free resources of the internet. She spends her evenings devouring books on supply chain logistics, watching complex tutorials on digital marketing algorithms, and attending local networking events. She relentlessly pours fresh, high-grade knowledge into her mind. Within a year, she possesses a highly specialized modern skill set that allows her to launch her own niche e-commerce brand. She bypassed the slow, expensive route of formal education and utilized real-world, actionable knowledge to instantly upgrade her vehicle. To build systems that generate massive wealth, you must become a lifelong, voracious learner. You must realize that you live in an era where the entirety of human knowledge is accessible from a device in your pocket. There is absolutely no excuse for remaining ignorant about finance, programming, marketing, or negotiation. If you do not know how to build a website, you read a book and learn. If you do not understand corporate tax structures, you listen to expert interviews and learn. You must constantly flush out the dirty, outdated assumptions in your mind and replace them with sharp, relevant, and powerful knowledge. Yet you can have a full tank of carefully protected time and an engine humming perfectly with the fresh oil of continuous education, but your vehicle will simply idle in the driveway if you do not have the courage to step on the accelerator. You must be willing to push your vehicle to the absolute limit. You must be willing to hit the red line. In automotive terms, the red line is the absolute maximum speed an engine is designed to operate at without sustaining damage. It is a zone of extreme heat, intense pressure, and maximum output. In the journey of wealth creation, the red line is the uncomfortable, terrifying boundary of your current capabilities. It is the space where genuine growth actually happens. Most people are absolutely terrified of the red line. They prefer to cruise comfortably in the slow lane, safely below the speed limit, avoiding any risk of failure, rejection, or exhaustion. They talk endlessly about the businesses they want to start, the books they want to write, and the lives they want to live. But they never actually press the pedal to the floor. They mistake having an interest in wealth with having a commitment to wealth. Interest reads a book about entrepreneurship and daydreams. Commitment stays awake until 3 in the morning writing lines of code for a prototype. Interest talks about changing the world. Commitment risks its life savings to file a patent and manufacture a product. Hitting the red line means intentionally placing yourself in situations where you might fail publicly and painfully. It means picking up the phone and pitching your service to a massive corporate client, even when your hands are shaking and your voice is unsteady. It means launching your product before it is completely perfect, simply because you know the market feedback is more valuable than your pride. Imagine a man who has spent 2 years meticulously designing a new type of ergonomic office chair. He has the blueprints, he has the fresh knowledge of manufacturing, and he has guarded his time to perfect the design. But he is paralyzed by the fear that nobody will buy it. He keeps delaying the launch, obsessing over minor aesthetic details, safely idling in his garage. He is refusing to hit the red line. Wealth is never generated in the garage. Wealth is generated when you push the vehicle out into the harsh, unforgiving traffic of the marketplace. When he finally gathers the courage to push the pedal down, to actually manufacture the first 100 units and face the brutal verdict of real customers, he enters the red line. He faces rejection, he endures manufacturing delays, and he sweats through sleepless nights. But he also experiences the unparalleled exhilaration of making his first sale, refining his system, and eventually scaling his operation to reach millions. You must recognize that the sweat, the fear, and the intense pressure of the red line are not signs that you are doing something wrong. They are the definitive proof that you are doing something right. They are the physical manifestations of a vehicle that is aggressively covering ground. When you fiercely protect your time, continuously refresh your education, and willingly push yourself into the terrifying high-growth zone of the red line, your vehicle becomes an unstoppable force. You are no longer just a dreamer admiring the map. You are a driver dominating the road. But to ensure this massive momentum is not wasted on a dead-end street, you must learn exactly how to evaluate the roads you choose to travel, applying a strict set of rules that separate the true expressways from the crowded, exhausting detours. Chapter 9. The Commandments of the Open Road. You have now constructed a legally armored vehicle. You are looking through a crystal-clear windshield of perception. Your hands are firmly gripping the steering wheel of your choices, and your engine is humming perfectly with the high-octane fuel of protected time and continuous education. You are fully prepared to accelerate. But here is where many enthusiastic, well-prepared individuals make a catastrophic error. They take their beautifully engineered, high-performance machine and drive it straight into a muddy, congested alleyway filled with potholes and dead ends. They start a business, assuming that the mere act of being an entrepreneur will automatically lead to financial freedom. But not all businesses are created equal. Just as there are slow lanes for your career, there are slow lanes for businesses. To reach explosive, life-altering wealth, you must ensure you are driving on a wide-open, unobstructed expressway. Evaluating whether a business opportunity is a dead-end job in disguise or a true expressway requires you to pass your ideas through an uncompromising, brutal set of filters. The first and most critical filter requires you to shatter one of the most widely celebrated pieces of advice ever given to aspiring creators, the mandate to simply follow your passion. We are told that if we do what we love, the money will naturally follow. This is a comforting, poetic thought, but it is a massive deception. The brutal, unforgiving truth is that the marketplace does not care about your passions, your dreams, or your personal desires. The marketplace is entirely selfish. It only cares about what you can do for it. It cares about its own problems, its own pain points, and its own unfulfilled desires. Imagine a young man who absolutely loves playing video games. It is his deepest passion. He decides to turn this passion into a business by starting a channel where he reviews his favorite games, hoping the world will reward him for doing what he loves. He pours his heart into his videos, but he struggles to gain any traction, barely making enough to pay his electricity bill. Why? Because the market is already saturated with millions of other people doing the exact same thing, and the market is not actively begging for another generic gaming review. His focus was entirely internal and selfish. Now, imagine a different individual. He might not have a burning, lifelong passion for household plumbing or logistics, but he observes a massive, agonizing problem in his city. He notices that finding a reliable, transparently priced emergency plumber or electrician in the middle of the night is a frustrating, nearly impossible task. He channels his energy into building a highly efficient dispatch-based software application that connects vetted handymen with desperate homeowners in real time, handling the pricing and the trust factor seamlessly. He solves a deep, widespread pain point. Wealth flows not to those who selfishly seek to fulfill their own desires, but to those who selflessly dedicate themselves to solving the problems of others. Your road must be paved with immense tangible value to the consumer. Once you have identified a deep need, you must immediately assess the gates blocking the entrance to this new road. This is the barrier of entry. A fundamental law of economics dictates that as the barriers to entering a business fall, the competition rises proportionally. If a business opportunity is presented to you where you can sign up in 5 minutes, pay a small onboarding fee, and immediately start selling a standardized product to your friends and family, you must run in the opposite direction. Whether it is a multi-level marketing scheme, a generic dropshipping course, or a ride-sharing gig, if anyone with a pulse can do it, everyone will do it. You will find yourself trapped in a massive traffic jam, competing against millions of desperate people, driving your profit margins down to zero. Extraordinary wealth requires extraordinary difficulty. You should actively seek out roads that are blocked by massive boulders, complex regulatory permits, steep technical learning curves, and significant capital requirements. You want the process to be exhausting and intimidating. Why? Because the masses are inherently lazy and averse to discomfort. When the average person encounters those massive boulders, they will sigh in frustration, turn their vehicle around, and go back to the comfort of the slow lane. If you are willing to bleed, sweat, and climb over those obstacles, you will find an empty, wide-open expressway on the other side, completely free of competition. The difficulty of the process is your ultimate protection. As you navigate this exclusive road, you must ensure that you are actually the one sitting in the driver's seat. Many incredibly talented people build massive businesses where someone else secretly holds the keys. They build a sprawling retail empire that is entirely dependent on a single global e-commerce platform's search algorithm. They create a massive audience and a lucrative media business entirely on a single social media network. This is the equivalent of building a breathtaking multi-crore mansion on a plot of land that you do not legally own. Tomorrow morning, the billionaire owner of that land can wake up, change the terms of service, alter the algorithm, or arbitrarily ban your account, and your entire empire will collapse into dust in an instant. True wealth requires absolute, uncompromising control. You must own the road you travel on. You must own your brand, your customer data, your pricing structure, and your distribution channels. You can certainly use third-party platforms to augment your reach, but they must never be the single point of failure for your enterprise. If an external entity has the power to destroy your income with a single software update, you are not a business owner. You are simply a highly paid hitchhiker, and you will eventually be thrown out of the car. Even if you fully control a well-protected road that solves a deep need, you must look at how far that road stretches into the horizon. Your business must possess the capacity for massive scale. If you open a beautifully decorated, artisanal cafe in a quiet residential neighborhood, you might brew the greatest coffee in the city and provide impeccable service. But your maximum scale is physically limited by the square footage of your shop, the number of seats available, and the number of cups of coffee you can physically pour in a 14-hour shift. You have intentionally built a speed limit into your business. You might make a comfortable living, but you will not experience explosive wealth because your impact is confined to a tiny local radius. However, if you source a unique, high-quality coffee bean, perfect the roasting process, and package it for national distribution through major supermarket chains and your own controlled e-commerce platform, your potential market shifts dramatically. You move from serving a few hundred local residents to potentially reaching hundreds of millions of people across the entire country. Your road must have the capacity to expand infinitely, allowing you to leverage the law of affecting millions without a proportional increase in your own physical labor. Finally, the ultimate test of any road is whether it eventually allows you to step out of the vehicle while the machine continues to drive itself. Your business must eventually detach from your physical presence. If you build a highly successful, prestigious consulting firm where clients pay a premium specifically to speak with you, and only you have not built a self-sustaining asset. You have built a highly demanding, incredibly lucrative prison. You cannot take a month off, you cannot fall ill, and you cannot sell the business because you are the business. Your road must be capable of deep automation. It must be designed from the ground up to function flawlessly through intelligent software systems, robust, documented operational procedures, and a capable, well-trained team of employees. The ultimate goal of building a business is not to work in it forever, but to build it to a point of critical mass where it generates profit and increases in asset value while you are completely absent. These 5 mandates, solving a deep need, overcoming high barriers to entry, maintaining absolute control, possessing infinite scale, and achieving eventual detachment from your time, are the ultimate unyielding filters for any opportunity. When you find an idea that survives this brutal gauntlet, you have found a true expressway. You have found a road capable of handling the massive horsepower of your upgraded vehicle. The only thing left to do is to execute the journey with a level of ferocity and precision that the world has never seen. Chapter 10. Execution. Accelerating to the destination. You have spent immense time and energy meticulously preparing for this exact moment. You have constructed a legally sound armored vehicle to protect your assets. You have painstakingly wiped your mental windshield clean of toxic, limiting beliefs. You have firmly grasped the steering wheel of your choices, understanding the terrifying horsepower behind every decision you make. You have evaluated the sprawling landscape of opportunities, completely avoiding the crowded, dead-end alleyways of conventional employment and instead selecting a wide-open, heavily fortified expressway that solves a profound human need. The map is drawn, the engine is roaring, but the most flawlessly engineered vehicle sitting perfectly aligned on the greatest road in the world is utterly worthless if you never press the accelerator. The final defining phase of your journey to extraordinary wealth is brutal, relentless, and unyielding execution. We live in a culture that worships the spark of a new idea. People guard their business concepts as if they were fragile, priceless diamonds, terrified that someone else might steal their brilliance. You will often hear aspiring creators whisper about their revolutionary app, their groundbreaking service, or their world-changing product, insisting they just need the right investor to recognize their genius. This is a massive, paralyzing delusion. The universe does not reward the thought, it only rewards the action. Ideas, no matter how profound or original, are nothing more than neurological impulses. They possess absolutely zero intrinsic value. At this very second, there are thousands of people across the globe having the exact same brilliant idea as you. The person who ultimately secures the fortune is not the one who thought of it first. It is the one who steps out into the terrifying vulnerability of the real world and actually builds it. Imagine 2 aspiring entrepreneurs sitting at a bustling local coffee shop, both independently struck by the exact same vision for a hyper-local farm-to-table vegetable delivery service. The first entrepreneur believes his idea is his golden ticket. He spends 6 agonizing months locked in his room, drafting a 60-page business plan, agonizing over the perfect corporate logo, and obsessing over securing venture capital funding before he has even spoken to a single farmer. He is playing business, safely hiding behind spreadsheets and theoretical projections. The second entrepreneur understands that execution is the only true multiplier. She does not write a business plan because she knows that business plans rarely survive their first actual collision with the marketplace. Instead, she wakes up at 4 in the morning, drives a rented scooter to the chaotic wholesale agricultural market, and negotiates directly with the vendors. She purchases a modest load of fresh produce, creates a simple, free messaging group for a single large residential complex, and manually delivers the vegetables to their doors by noon. Her logo is terrible, her software is non-existent, and her process is completely unpolished. But she is executing. Within weeks, she is gathering real data, generating actual revenue, and adjusting her inventory based on what her customers are actively demanding. While the first entrepreneur is still tweaking his PowerPoint slides, she is aggressively dominating the neighborhood and preparing to scale. Execution will brutally crush a brilliant idea every single time. When you finally thrust your imperfect creation into the unforgiving traffic of the marketplace, you will inevitably encounter friction. You will face pedestrians on your road, the customers who interact with your business. The conventional corporate mindset views customer complaints as a frustrating nuisance, something to be minimized, ignored, or aggressively argued against. This is a fatal miscalculation. Your customers are the ultimate GPS navigation system for your wealth journey. When they complain, they are not attacking you. They are generously pointing out the exact potholes on your road that are preventing you from driving faster. Consider a young founder who launches a premium subscription box for exotic spices. A month into the launch, he receives a furious email from a customer whose package arrived with crushed cardamom pods and torn packaging. The amateur business owner reacts with defense and ego, blaming the courier service and refusing a refund. He loses that customer forever and likely gains a bitter public review. The true master of execution, however, recognizes this complaint as pure gold. He immediately apologizes, issues a full refund, and sends a replacement box overnight at his own expense. But he does not stop there. He investigates the packaging process, realizes the structural flaw in the cardboard design, and overhauls his entire shipping protocol. By transforming a disgruntled pedestrian into a fiercely loyal evangelist, and by permanently fixing a systemic flaw, he accelerates his business. Exceptional customer service is not a department. It is the ultimate growth hack. You must strive to be someone's savior, solving their pain points so beautifully that they cannot help but hand you their money and tell everyone they know. As your speed increases and your system begins to generate significant revenue, you will inevitably attract hijackers. These are the toxic partners, the unethical suppliers, and the lazy employees who attempt to climb into your vehicle and drain your fuel. You must be utterly ruthless in protecting your momentum. If an investor demands a suffocating amount of control, or if a co-founder consistently fails to execute their share of the labor, you must throw them to the curb immediately. You cannot afford to carry dead weight on an expressway designed for maximum velocity. Your loyalty must be to the system and the vision, not to the feelings of those who refuse to match your intensity. This relentless drive must be intensely focused. One of the greatest killers of massive momentum is the temptation of entrepreneurial polygamy. When a creator tastes their first bit of success, they often become intoxicated by their own capabilities. They start a digital marketing agency, and because it begins to show a slight profit, they suddenly decide to launch an e-commerce brand on the side, while simultaneously trying to build a mobile app for fitness tracking. They divide their finite time, their capital, and their cognitive bandwidth across 3 entirely different roads. As a result, they drive at 20 kilometers an hour on all 3, eventually stalling out completely. Massive wealth requires aggressive, uncompromising monogamy to a single system. You must pick one road, push the accelerator to the absolute floor, and dominate that specific path until the system is entirely self-sustaining and the asset is ready for liquidation. Only after you have successfully built and exited a fully mature money tree should you even consider looking at another road. Ultimately, your execution must transcend the mere selling of a commodity. You must build a brand. A business sells a product, but a brand sells an identity, a feeling, and a promise. If you only sell a functional product, you are trapped in a desperate race to the bottom, constantly slashing your prices to compete with 1,000 other nameless businesses selling the exact same thing. But if you build a brand that resonates with deep human emotions, whether that is the promise of pristine health, the feeling of exclusive luxury, or the comfort of absolute reliability, you command a premium. You build an asset that possesses massive intrinsic value, making it highly attractive to the massive conglomerates that will eventually offer you a life-changing liquidation event. The journey you have embarked upon is not for the faint of heart. It demands a level of sacrifice, discipline, and sheer uncomfortable exertion that the vast majority of society is simply unwilling to tolerate. You will face dark, exhausting days where the road seems impossibly steep and the destination feels like a mirage. But you must remember why you started. You did not choose this path to settle for a life of quiet desperation, trading your youth for the fleeting relief of a weekend. You chose this path because you understand that dedicating a few years of your life to working like no one else will allow you to spend the rest of your life living like no one else. Grasp the steering wheel. Focus your eyes on the horizon. Drown out the noise of the skeptics and the cynics. You possess the map, you own the vehicle, and the open expressway is waiting. Now, press the accelerator to the floor and do not ever look back.